Hello, anyone. Welcome to the Jeff Bushman Experience. You are here, and we are recording on April the 26th, I hope. Yes, April 26th, 2015. This is number 4 in the series of the Jeff Bushman Experience videos. I wanted to cover a couple of technical details, and then I'll tell you what we're going to be talking about on the program today. And we do have a special guest. In fact, I think the most special guest we could have, but we'll cover that in just a second. By the way, if you are watching this, and obviously you are, or you wouldn't be hearing this message anyway. That was an idiotic sentence. If you are seeing this, but you have not seen the former recordings, former programs, let me invite you in particular to visit number 3. Number 3 is actually in 2 parts because of a technical glitch we had. But the major part of the program consisted of an interview with Dr. Kotka. Dr. Kotka is a naturopathic physician. We talked about antibiotic resistance, and I think you'll find that program very interesting. So please take a look at that. Also, in the technical area, you have probably noticed that the video quality in our videos has been less than stellar, including this one. We have purchased but have not yet adapted a new camera. So, and it shoots in what's called, for you techno geeks, 1080p, which basically means that you will not see my face stopping at several points as you see motion when I move my face. It was much more fluid. We have done some tests with it, but we're not ready yet to integrate it. So that was the word I should have used, integrated. So hopefully by next week, you should see the better quality video, and the lighting will be better as well. So that takes care of that. When we have our conversation later, as with last week's video, the way this thing is set up, I can have a Skype conversation in audio with someone, but I believe I cannot do video with them, and that's been what we've seen so far. So they will be available on the phone. You'll still see my questionable face, and you will hear their voice. And let me tell you about today's guest. Today's guest is the lovely Alicia Bushman, and she and I are going to talk about something with which we both have a lot of experience. We have both been, I guess you would call it, lay herbal people. There's a couple of jokes that go in there, but leaving all of them aside, we have been studying natural healing and health for a very long time, both of us. And while we're not experts like Dr. Kotka is, and many other people, we are somewhat knowledgeable. And I don't know if you can hear it in my voice at the moment, but I have a cold. And Alicia has the flu. Our guest is, in fact, Alicia Bushman, my lovely bride. And we are going to be talking about our experiences with natural healing, particularly in the area of colds and flu, because guess what? The season is upon us. And if we have the opportunity to remember to do so, we're going to share with you something that somebody said to her with regard to flu shots. We'll come to that later. But first, I'd like to tell you that you are invited to take a look at a site I have used called Bushman Books.blogspot.com. bushmanbooks.blogspot.com. From there, you can take a look at the books I've written that are available on Amazon as ebooks in the Kindle format. And let me also mention that if you don't have a Kindle, that's perfectly fine. You can download an app for your phone. It's free. Or a program to your computer, which is a Kindle reader. You don't have to buy the Kindle. And this is from Amazon, and they give it freely because they figure you're going to buy more books from their site. They're not stupid. And if you do that, you can read any kind of Kindle ebook right on your phone or on your computer. That's basically it. And then if you go to bushmanbooks.blogspot.com, you can do 2 different things. One is you can, of course, go to my books. You can take a quick look at them, decide if you're interested, and if so, you can download them. They're $2.99 each. The reason for that price is not just because I enjoy giving something away at a low price. Giving away may be the wrong term. But also because that actually works to the best interest of the author. It's one of the best prices you can offer if you are a writer who wants to self-publish your books on Amazon Kindle site. But you can learn more about that at Kindle Direct Publishing. And you can look that up on Amazon. But you can look me up through bushmanbooks.blogspot.com. We are also in the process of creating a new website. We've actually already reserved the domain. And from the site, which you can look at, but it won't tell you anything, but you can look in future weeks, check back with us, it's jeffbushman.net, and it will link to all of our various enterprises. This program, for one, the process serving business, the insurance business, neither of which you can take advantage of, I should have said, unless you're in Arizona, or in the event you have something in Arizona that you need to have taken care of. Anyway, end of commercial. Now we're in the show. The U.S. Constitution has a whole section on treaties. And a treaty is an agreement between two countries, two or more countries, I should say. Examples of well-known treaties are the North Atlantic Treaty. One second, please. Pardon me. We have a very highly professional process here by which the host takes a drink. Watch this. Cheers, skol, l'chaim, saludos, anything else you want to add. In any event, the North Atlantic Treaty is an obvious example by its name. The Southeast Asia Treaty is another one. Each of those treaties created organizations, NATO and SEATO respectively, each of which arguably have gotten us into military battles. SEATO is what was used as an excuse or pretext for getting us into the war in Vietnam, for example. And there are many other treaties, obviously. NAFTA is a good example. That's the North American Free Trade Agreement. It was called an agreement. It wasn't called a treaty, but it was a treaty. And it was ratified by Congress. The reason I am mentioning the subject of treaties now is because of two new agreements that are being negotiated by the Obama administration. One is the Iran nuclear agreement, for which there is a framework at the moment. And the other one is the Pacific Trade, I'm trying to remember exactly what it's called, PTT, Pacific Trade Talks, I believe is what it is now. It will be ultimately the Pacific Trade Agreement. And there are agreements. In the case of the Iran agreement, obviously it's between the United States and other Western powers, and Iran, if it comes to fruition. And the other one is the Pacific Trade Agreement, as it will be likely called, which is an agreement between the United States and other nations that border on the Pacific Ocean, essentially. Essentially in Asia. Why is the question of treaties coming up? Well, in both cases, the administration has postulated that they are entitled under the normal liberty given to the executive branch in foreign policy matters to negotiate those, pardon me, to negotiate those as foreign policy agreements. And there are certain things that unquestionably come under that general rubric. But where you're talking about these agreements, no one can explain to you, I guarantee you, what's the difference between a treaty and an agreement that is not a treaty. And even though, again, there are some that are clearly just executive agreements, like we're going to agree to open the border with Canada, as a silly example. You really wouldn't need a treaty for that. But where you're talking about something that is fairly meaningful and fairly broad, certainly in terms of the Pacific Trade Agreement, with Iran it's less secure, but arguably they're both treaties. Why is it important whether something is a treaty or not? Well, most of you, or many of you already know, that a treaty has to be ratified by Congress. And this is not just an agreement like the Congress has agreed to now, where they, as long as you get more than 50%, you are essentially, they're not calling it ratification, but you're essentially ratified. A treaty has to be ratified by 2/3 of both houses of Congress. This is one of the reasons, by the way, that treaties have a higher priority in American law than anything but the Constitution itself. So you've got the Constitution on top. I'm using my hands now. You've got the Constitution on top. You have treaties under that. Okay. Then you have federal laws. Then you have state laws. Okay. And although it's a completely different subject, one of the treaties that the United States negotiated many years ago was the treaty to end the war with Mexico that we had in the 1840s. That treaty is called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And it has a higher level of priority than any federal law or state law. And again, nothing but the Constitution. The Constitution, as an example, doesn't have any official language in it. That is to say, although it's clearly written in English, and English is the predominant language in our country, there is nothing in the Constitution that establishes that English will be an official language. The United States, unlike many countries, has no official language. Okay, so when the Treaty of Guadalupe said that the language and culture of Mexico shall in the states taken over by the United States from Mexico at the conclusion of that war, the Mexican language and culture shall have equal priority with that of the United States. That obviously takes precedence and priority over any state law, like Arizona's, that says English is the official language. Now, no one has argued that, particularly in terms of the federal government coming in as they should to invalidate Arizona's law about official English, but they could under the Constitution. Okay, so we get back to Iran and the Pacific Trade Agreement. The bottom line reality is those are treaties. If you think they're not, tell me how they're not. You're welcome to do that by checking with us by emailing us at tjbradio@gmail.com. But they're treaties. That means they require ratification by 2/3 of the members of the House and the Senate. Let me tell you my bias. My bias is, 1, I'm a fan of President Obama's. 2, I think the Iran nuclear deal is a great idea. Okay, I think the Pacific Trade Agreement's a terrible idea. If in case that hasn't identified me as a Democrat, there you are. But in both cases, as much as I'd like the Iran deal to go forward, it shouldn't go forward without ratification by Congress. That's what the Constitution says. And that's what we should do. Okay. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to be joined by Alicia Bushman, and we're going to discuss healing of colds and flu by natural means. And basically, she is now going to the microphone so she can join us. Let me explain another technical deal. I explained that Skype is audio only while we're doing the video. Again, assuming that we don't ever figure out anything to the contrary, that's the way it is. That's why Dr. Kotka in last week's video, forgive that noise by the way, she's obviously donning the headset. Last week's video that we did, Dr. Kotka was only heard and not seen, is for that same reason. And when we ultimately depart from that conversation, then we'll be keeping, just so you know, if you hear any noise, it's because we'll be keeping Skype open, because last week, the reason we had to make 2 videos was because in the first video, when we disconnected Skype, the video shut down. I'm not sure that we have to do that this time, but just in case. So, we are now joined, and I'm going to start off with something very clever by saying, "Are you there, comma, honey?" Question mark.
Yes, darling, I am here.
Okay, so I should have added, by the way, that's the reason that Alicia is on audio only, because the truth is, if she were on video, her beauty would outshine everything else that you could possibly see. So it's not because of her appearance that we've kept her off the camera. All right.
Thank you, darling. That's very sweet. But when I have the flu, I'm a little bit dimmed.
Okay.
What is it you really want?
Okay. So let's talk about colds and flu. You have the flu. I have a cold, and I'll be in Scotland before you. Why don't we talk about things that you have used in your experience that help, the word cure might be the wrong word, but help heal the flu and bad colds faster?
Okay, well, the first thing is that if you can pick up on when you're coming down with something really early, that's the best time to start to treat it. Now, that's not always possible, particularly during allergy season, or if, we all go through periods where we're a little more tired, a little more achy, a little more emotional. So do try to learn your own cues and really pick them up as fast as you can.
Let me stop you there, okay? Because a lot of people who are not into eating healthily or natural healing um, don't know that there are cues like this. So talk a little bit more about the cues that sometimes our body gives us when we're coming down with a cold.
Well, speaking of eating, your appetite can be somewhat diminished. And even though you're very tired, it can sometimes be more difficult to get to sleep. Your sleep patterns start to change, or you just need enormous amounts of it to feel okay. All of a sudden, you feel a little tired, a little achy. And one symptom that we have both realized can occur is that you can become more emotional too, for no reason you can possibly figure out.
Yeah,
You
when
can
a McDonald's commercial makes you think you're going to cry, it's time to start upping the vitamin C.
yeah, um, as well as the fact that there can be a little tiny, almost non-noticeable burning in your nose or your eyes or your throat, and then it's just kind of real fleeting and it's gone.
I get a dry spot in my throat. It makes it feel like, wow, what's going on there? And then if you've gone through it enough and you realize, okay, what's going on there is I may be coming down with something.
Right. So if you can pick up those cues, and generally there's more than one. It's just that it can be very subtle, just as the cold is starting. As an example, I really did not know I was coming down with the flu during a very active day. I was really pushing myself. When I look back on it, I was really pushing myself harder than the day demanded, just kind of to be there and do what I needed to do. So if you're putting out more energy than you usually do to um, go get through your day, that's another cue. Now, there are other reasons why these things happen. So you kind of have to be intuitive about this stuff.
Right.
Because just in the course of living, there are, adjustments our bodies make that sometimes can seem like we're having a few of those things occur, but we're really not coming down with something. Our bodies are just sort of recalibrating in a way, actually. Right. So, that happens too.
Yeah, talk about some of the things that you've taken when you feel a cold is coming on that seems to blunt the cold or flu so that it doesn't necessarily manifest itself.
Well, one is an increase in vitamin C. You've already mentioned that, and you want to be taking more than the recommended amount of vitamin C on a daily basis anyway. I also not only take the vitamin C that comes in vitamins, but I also increase my amount of vitamin C containing foods. And as an example, really, we all know about citrus fruit that does contain a lot of vitamin C. And what people often don't know is that berries, particularly strawberries, contain even more vitamin C than citrus fruit. And so do regular potatoes, like baking potatoes. They have a lot of vitamin C too. But you have to be careful not to eat those potatoes or your strawberries in a really unhealthy manner. Like, don't put your strawberries in a sea of whipped cream.
Right.
And don't put a lot of sour cream, cheddar cheese, and bacon bits on your potato. That's really going the wrong way. You want to eat lightly when you sense you're coming down with a cold.
Yeah, I also want to add that it's a bad idea to put cheddar cheese and bacon bits on your strawberries.
Yes, that's even worse.
By the way, you mentioned a couple of things I want to respond to. Number one, you mentioned the about eating oranges. If you're looking for vitamin C, I held up a bottle for the camera a moment ago of vitamin C, and the pills that are in there are 1,000 milligram tablets. An orange, when it's picked off a tree, has 55 milligrams of vitamin C. And vitamin C is sensitive to time and light and temperature. So if the orange has been picked, it's been sitting in a brightly lit supermarket or even a produce store, it's then been refrigerated, and it's been there for 4 days. The amount of vitamin C you're going to get is de minimis. However, there are other things that are, we talked about this together earlier today. There are other things that are in an orange that may not have been discovered yet in terms of a substance that will probably also do you some good. Talk for a moment about why orange juice may not be as great a choice.
Why what may not be?
Orange juice.
Orange juice. Okay. Well, orange juice is has a level of processing that makes it less than an orange in its natural state in terms of its benefits. It is a pasteurized product, which means now it's good that it doesn't have germs, but on the other hand, you do want to have all the properties that an orange does contain. And the thing is that oranges have other substances in them that work synergistically with whatever vitamin C you're taking in,
Right.
as well as the vitamin C in the orange, that allow your body to use the vitamin C more effectively. So it's always good to have those foods both in vitamins and in their natural state as well.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with taking the vitamin C tablets. We're not suggesting oranges in lieu of vitamin C, but if you can do both of them. The other thing is, as I mentioned, the vitamin C tablets that are 1,000 milligrams have something like a little less than 20 times the amount of vitamin C that an orange has that's just off the tree. It's also grossly more convenient if you're at work than necessarily eating an orange. You also mentioned something else just now about, and we alluded to it before, talking about appetite and hunger. There is a saying that a lot of people repeat, and most of them repeat it unknowingly, so let me share that. The saying is, stuff a cold, starve a fever. What many people still believe that means is that you should eat a great deal when you have a cold and don't eat very much at all when you have a fever. That's a misunderstanding of how that expression came to be. Originally, starve meant die. Now, starvation causes death, obviously, but that's not it. Starve was a synonym for die in Older English. And therefore, the saying really means, if you stuff a cold, you will starve or die of a fever. That's when fevers were a lot more serious, obviously. So the really good advice in terms of food is, especially if you don't feel very hungry, but even if you do, try to limit the amount of food you eat when you are A, coming down with a cold, and B, when you have a cold, and talk for a minute about the kind of foods that are advisable and inadvisable when you are getting sick or are in fact sick.
Well, stay away from meat and dairy is really what you want to avoid, and processed sugars, like the kind of thing you find in a candy bar or a piece of cake. The sugar in fruits and vegetables that are naturally there are just fine for you. And in other words, you want to eat complex rather than simple carbohydrates.
Right.
However, in terms of simple, you want to keep your diet very simple, small portions of really nourishing, comforting food like a vegetable soup, some rice, toast, bananas, any kind of fruit. A little bit of nut butter on your toast or a hard-boiled egg, not a lot of eggs, are a good way to give you a nice nourishing shot of protein. And you just want to have things that are light and aren't going to prevent your body from responding with its immune system because it's so busy trying to handle and digest and process heavy food that can take your body's energy into processing those foods away from fighting the virus.
Right.
Don't want to do that.
Yeah, the body has a limited amount of energy, especially when it's sick. and it's better to use that when for healing when you're ill. By the way, I didn't mention your credential. Okay, um, Alicia is a registered nurse. She doesn't work in the field now, but she is educated and was licensed as a registered nurse. So this is not just off the top of her head or mine, because there's so little on the top of my head. But the fact is, does come from some kind of background. So the reason that we don't want to eat a lot of meat or dairy, and in our house, we don't consume either anytime. But if you are a normal consumer of meat and dairy, you don't want to have very much of it because for a couple of reasons. Especially when you have a cold, because these things are much harder to digest. In fact, they used to tell, maybe they still do, they used to tell people with ulcers to drink milk and eat ice cream and consume cheese, prospect which I remember and find disgusting. But the reason they did that is because those items, the dairy products, are slow to digest. They're difficult to digest, as a result of which they kind of left a coating on the inner lining of your stomach. And the idea was, pardon me, is that if you had those products, the acid would have something to work on and wouldn't work on your stomach lining. That was the concept. And they were half right. That is, those things are hard to digest, and meat is as well. And again, it goes to that energy question. Do you want your body to spend its energy digesting those products when it could be using its energy to heal your body? This is not a myth, and it's not like hippy-dippy, peculiar stuff time. These are legitimate things, and if you ask your doctor, some of them will tell you what we've just said is legitimate in terms of trying to cut down on your meat and dairy during a cold. A lot of people don't tell you that, though, unless you ask. You sounded like you were going to add something to that.
Well, I wanted to also talk about the kinds of substances you can take other than vitamin C to help fight off a virus.
Please.
And there is a alcohol-based, it's called a tincture, herb liquid called Isatis.
It's like Isatis.
Okay. And you can order it online, and it is really very effective. Once again, the earlier you start it, it's a good idea to take a dropperful or 2 dropperfuls, say between 4 and 6 times a day. It doesn't taste great.
You got that right. Yeah.
But the overriding taste actually is the alcohol in it. You don't want to take, it's got enough alcohol, frankly, that you don't want to take it and drive.
Right.
You want to take it when you're at home.
You want to give serious thought to taking it and walking. It's pretty powerful stuff. Unless you're a big person, both of us are fairly slight. If you're a big person, you can take more. And obviously, if you're slight, and obviously different people have different tolerance levels of alcohol, but you certainly shouldn't drive after taking it. Go ahead.
No, and that is pretty effective. And I have noticed feeling somewhat better, like the first half hour I take it,
right,
and then I tend to dip again.
Right. That's an herbal antiviral. It works very well for colds. It also works for some other things. And, let me just say something as an aside, and then I'll let you get back to more things people can take. One of the things that people respond with is, if you don't do anything for a cold, it lasts 7 days. If you do all the wonderful stuff you're supposed to do, it'll last a week. It's simply not true. The fact is, the studies that suggest that vitamin C doesn't do any good to cure or relieve a cold are flawed. If you look at them, what they'll say is that, these people had colds, we gave them 500 milligrams of vitamin C in the morning, 500 milligrams of vitamin C in the afternoon, and 500 milligrams of vitamin C at night, and there was no noticeable or measurable change, or no statistically significant change, in the group that took the vitamin C. And my response is, well, of course not, you morons. You didn't give them enough. When you are ill or coming down with something or actually sick, you need to take more. you need to take them to the extent of what Linus Pauling, the expert in vitamin C, talked about as, forgive the crude phrase, the bowel tolerance limit. I prefer using the stomach tolerance limit because I don't mind thinking with stomachs. Anyway, but you take it until you start to feel your stomach ready to explode. That said, in ancient days, meaning like the 1950s, they used to give people who had colds enemas. And they did that to kind of produce the obvious result, which actually did some good in terms of relieving the symptoms because it's a way of sloughing off the virus. If you take enough vitamin C and just use natural healing, your body will similarly slough off the viruses. I thought I handled that rather delicately. What do you think?
Yes, that was very good. Viruses are sloughed off through that process that you go through when you go to the bathroom. That
Yeah.
more virus particles will actually leave your body that way. I had a European grandmother who believed in this religiously, and I hate to say she was right. It wasn't pleasant. I used to hide I was sick as long as I could as a kid because I knew what was coming.
I'm healthy. I feel great. I feel great.
Okay, don't pay any attention to the high fever or the cough. I feel marvelous. Although at the age of 5, I certainly wouldn't have put it that way.
Yeah, I'm not comparing you to her in this context, but our Chihuahua will hide when she knows she's going to get medicine for something or a bath. She'll try to find a place to hide in the house, and it works about as well for her as it probably did for you.
Yeah, about as well.
Anyway, so
Anyway,
before you go on, that Isatis stuff, obviously that's not going to work for alcoholics, and it is available, I believe, in a non-alcoholic substance. One of the things that tinctures are for is they allow the power of the herb to be concentrated. It extracts the herb into the alcohol, and it's really potent. And as Alicia said, the taste is horrible, but it's tolerable. I shouldn't say horrible. It's very strong, but it feels really good going down because of the warmth of the alcohol, I believe. I say that because we don't drink, and I don't know that would not be true in a regular glass of wine or something. But my recollection of drinking wine and beer is it doesn't feel nearly as warm as that tincture does, and that, as I said, is an antiviral. It's designed to help defeat the virus. One of the things I want to say, then I want to come back to you in addition to the Isatis, other things, is the way that viruses reproduce, and since you're the scientific expert and I'm not, you can correct me if I say anything wrong, is that a virus gets into your cell and it uses the cell's own mitochondria. This circular motion thing I'm doing with my hand is supposed to be a cell.
No, it's not the mitochondria.
Oh, no, I said it. I said it's the... Okay, go ahead. What is it that reproduces?
It just uses the cell. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because it's rather long-winded, but it uses the cell's reproductive capacity to reproduce itself. Nobody actually knows whether viruses are life within themselves or pre-life, simply because they are not able to reproduce without getting inside the cell of a host, which they then kind of they use to their own purposes. So mitochondria produce energy for the cell. They aren't specifically engaged in cellular reproduction.
Well, when the cells reproduce, or when the reproduction occurs, and the viruses try to get into some more cells, that's what they do. And as long as they keep reproducing and keep getting into cells, the virus lasts. Viruses ultimately run out of energy, and that's why you get over a cold. But if they have a harder time getting into the cell's membrane, into the cell, then it's harder for them to reproduce, so you will get better faster. That's the process. And vitamin C, among other things, makes the membrane harder to penetrate. That's why vitamin C, A, will help relieve a cold faster because the virus will wear itself out faster. And B, if you take vitamin C on a regular basis, not to the extent you do when you're sick, but take vitamin C on a regular basis, you will get colds less often. Okay? All right. And obviously, that doesn't mean not at all. Okay, go ahead. What else can we talk about in addition to iSatis?
Uh, by the way, one company that you can find this at on the net is Montana Herb Company. I know
Right.
because we've gotten several different products from them. They're really high quality.
Yeah, they are.
Montana Herb Company.
Right.
Um, the other thing I wanted to mention is ginger. If you can't go to the trouble because you're feeling too rotten, believe me, I completely understand this. I haven't done it myself right now because I'm just feeling too sick to deal with it. But if you can get ginger capsules, ginger really helps your immune system fight off
Right.
anything, whether it's viral, bacteriological, doesn't matter. It really just gives your immune system an extra boost. Plus, it takes down inflammation and the symptoms that we experience due to any sort of infection, no matter what it's caused by, is the inflammation that the body goes into in order to throw off the infection. It's an immune response, but that's what causes all our miserable symptoms.
Right.
Is that inflammatory response?
And also, of course,
So,
the ginger helps relieve some of the nausea that you may get if you have a flu.
right. Ginger is fantastic for nausea. It's as effective as anti-nausea drugs given during cancer therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really have the energy to go the extra mile, get some ginger at the grocery store, at the farmer's market, whatever. It looks like this really gnarly looking sort of pale tan root,
Right.
beige, and it smells fantastic.
Yeah.
And you can put it in a blender if you don't have a juicer and just chop it up a lot, high speed, and it will release a lot of juice. Then you'll have to strain it. You have a juicer, it doesn't need to be strained because a juicer will catch the fibrous part of the root for you. And after you've got this juice, and you have to really, go through quite a bit of root to get a good amount of the juice. You then add a tablespoon or two of specifically wildflower honey, and you just kind of let it sit there for several hours. And after that, you drink it down, and it's really very helpful in making you feel better and making you feel better faster. The other thing is that you can also use that ginger for a cough, but what you do is that to make a really great cough syrup, natural cough syrup, is you can either use some of the juice or you can just open the capsule, put a capsule full in a little saucer, and you add half a capsule full of cayenne, which is red pepper, and is also either you can get that wherever you buy your herbs, or you can just use like a pinch of red pepper from an herbal, like the kinds of herbs that you cook with. That's fine. Then you add a tablespoon of vinegar, like the kind you use in a salad, and don't use a household grade vinegar. You don't want that.
That is, don't use the white
burn
vinegar.
your mouth.
Right.
Then you add a tablespoon of honey, a couple of tablespoons of warm water, and mix it in the saucer. You take a tablespoon of that whenever you start having a coughing fit, and it works great.
And quickly.
And not only that, it has the expectorant quality so that you will start to have if you have an infection, whether it's viral or bacterial, that is producing a lot of heavy mucus that you're having trouble getting up. After a few doses of that, you will start coughing that up when you cough. And that will heal you a lot faster. It's not pleasant, but that stuff needs to get up and out.
Right.
So, and also I want to warn you, this is not great tasting, and it's you take a tablespoon of this syrup and you find yourself shivering. Oh,
And
but
grimacing and puckering your lips.
yeah, but it really does make you feel a lot better.
Yeah. Um, Let me also add to the mix astragalus. Oh, by
Uh-huh.
the way, the cayenne and the ginger are available in capsules. You had mentioned where you buy your herbs and you buy your vitamins. That's all true. But specifically, those have become available now even at Walmart. And Walmarts are, of course, throughout our country and in certain other ones. Uh, Walmart has really expanded their supplement variety. So there's lots of stuff you can get there, and for most things, it makes no difference whether you buy it cheaply at Walmart or expensively at I don't know, GNC or someplace else. The truth is, you can get some stuff there that's certainly fine quality and in terms of supplements, and is available and cheap. So that's that. But let me mention astragalus. Astragalus is a good herb for building immunity, number one, as is ginger, you mentioned. Also, astragalus is very good for healing generally, but specifically when you have a cold. I'm not one of these people, you are, but there are lots of people who get chest involvement every time they get a cold. They'll get a cold, then it'll become a chest cold. They'll be coughing and be in pain, and then they can sometimes get bronchitis or even pneumonia. Astragalus, if taken in sufficient amounts and beginning as early as possible in the life cycle of a cold, will help prevent the location of the cold in the chest and therefore the bronchitis and any other complications. Did you want to add anything about that?
Well, one thing I want to say is that one herb you can't get at Walmart is the astragalus. You have to go to a health food store for that.
Correct.
But excuse me. But I also want to add that there is one herb that we haven't been taking. We haven't had it in the house for a while, but it is a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's called elderberry. It
Right.
comes in a capsule, and it's this really pretty sort of mauve color inside.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start taking that at the first symptoms of a virus, that also tends to help fight it off. One other thing I want to mention, as just to go back to an earlier portion of the program,
Mm-hmm.
that is helpful in recognizing when you're going to come down with something, is that you suddenly find it rather difficult to concentrate on things that you usually concentrate on very easily.
Right.
Jeff and I refer to this as cloudy head.
Mm-hmm.
And that is another symptom that you will notice. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to mention that as well.
If all of a sudden you can't remember things that you remembered yesterday, as contrasted with 10 years ago, if you can't, if you're not getting a sudden onset of Alzheimer's, you may be dealing with a virus. Yeah, that's one of the things that happens with viruses, specifically cold and flu. You get cloudy, you get overly emotional. I made a joke before about wanting to cry at a McDonald's commercial. Well, haven't watched TV in quite a while, but I know they used to have the Hallmark commercials and some of the older AT&T commercials, about reach out and all that stuff. Those often, I mean, if you're in a perfectly normal state, can make you feel emotional. If you've got a cold coming on or are actually in the throes of a cold, it's really easy to have that happen. All of a sudden, and if you're not inclined to cry, as I am not, you at least get like a little lump in the throat when that occurs. And it's again time to reach for. He's holding it up now. The bottle of vitamin C, okay, and the other substances we talked about, or at least go have an orange.
I'd also like to say that specifically to women, this feels a lot like PMS. And if you're a man and you are experiencing this coming down with a cold, you can finally get at least some small insight to what it's like on an emotional level.
What PMS
but
feels like.
my doll won't help with this. I'm sorry.
Well, it might with some of the symptoms, but it's not going to take care of the cause. Okay. Is there any other thing? I can't think of any. Oh, we didn't talk about echinacea and golden seal. Did you want to mention those?
Well, first of all, if you're older than 40, echinacea does not tend to be effective. It just is not really biologically effective after that age. Golden seal is frankly not something I would recommend because it's really harsh on the stomach for a lot of people. And if you're increasing your vitamin C, I would frankly stay away from it.
Yeah.
You can also just go to a health food store and get some antimicrobials that have a good mixture of a number of things that are really good for you. But this, basically we haven't done that because we've kind of hit on the combination of things which specifically work for us, which we've already talked about.
Right. Okay. Well, that's it. We've kind of covered that, and we've talked about the excuse me, about the various things that you can take, but also there's a couple of other things worth mentioning. One thing that I'm frequently reminded of by our guest is getting enough sleep.
Yes.
Getting enough sleep is a really important thing to help avoid getting sick. And even you can do everything else perfectly right. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to get hit. Okay, it's going to happen. And frankly, that's how I got this cold that I'm experiencing. Yeah. But I'm not going to tell my wife, so don't mention it to her.
I won't say a word here.
Okay, thanks. And if you do that, if you burn the candle at both ends, it's much easier to get sick. If you also have a lousy diet, which fortunately we don't have, but if you also have a lousy diet, you're going to be much more prone to getting sick. So if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, as the old expression goes, it may be time to make some changes in your life. It's not really a good idea to either walk around all the time feeling lousy, or putting weight on, or doing any of the or just catching cold and the flu all the time. If you're catching more than a couple of colds a year, it kind of is time to examine what you're doing. Okay? Anything else you wanted to mention?
Yes, dipping into the spiritual a little bit, I'd like to add that there is a natural healing and protective force in life itself. And we have to have enough faith that that is going to be there for us to not think that it's going to require us to live a really unhealthy life to be okay, whether that's financially or any other way. That we have to have that faith that we can respect our bodies. And that's an important kind of thing to tune into. A very wise woman, when a number of years ago, once said to me, actually at a very difficult time in my life as a teenager, you have to realize that there is something in life that's going to heal you and protect you, and trust it. Trust it. And if you can do that on an ongoing basis, it's also just good for general overhaul healing of your psyche, your body, whatever kind of pain you have from your past. Just trust. And trust that you can be okay getting enough sleep and taking the time to eat well and exercise. Do what it is that your body needs.
Okay. Also, I didn't want to interrupt, but I just want to let you know that I have full respect for your body.
And I for yours.
Thank you. Okay, and now that we've made everybody sick, ginger will help you if we've just made you nauseous. By the way, one quick thing. Ginger, in a blind study, there's lots of flaws with some of these studies that demonstrate that supplements are of no value. But ginger does have a value, and that's been scientifically proven when they did a double-blind study of ginger against Dramamine, and Alicia was making reference to this before. Ginger versus Dramamine. Ginger is equally effective, no more effective, but equally effective with Dramamine. And Dramamine has side effects. Ginger doesn't. By the way, ginger is also a lot cheaper. Yeah.
I did one, actually, the comparison I was making was to anti-cancer nausea drugs, which the main one is Zofran. And ginger is as good or better than that.
Right.
So you want to talk about industrial strength nausea, try chemotherapy.
Yeah.
That will do it.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, since you mentioned that, And since we can take as much time on this program as we want, but anyway.
No, we can't. I'm not feeling very well.
I know, I understand. And I have to
Okay.
go in a little bit too. But the thing I was going to say is that um, ginger, in terms of chemotherapy, um, they have discovered that if someone is undergoing chemotherapy and they have a piece of raw ginger with them, recently cut open, so they can kind of inhale or just breathe in the smell. I guess that is inhaling. Breathe in the smell of the ginger. The negative effects of the chemotherapy in terms of appetite suppression or sickening to the stomach are enormously reduced. Which is really important because most people who do die of cancer after experiencing chemotherapy do so because essentially they're starving themselves. They get to the point because of the chemotherapy that they can't eat anymore. And this smelling of the ginger plant, the ginger root, when they're experiencing the chemotherapy will often grossly ameliorate that. So if you know anyone who's experiencing that, you may want to suggest this very simple technique for them to help themselves. Anything you want to add before we finish?
Yes, I'm getting the dog and it's raining.
All right.
Thank you.
That's it. Go right ahead. And we are
Bye-bye.
done. Bye. We are done. Thank you. And please feel free to join us next week. And please do as they used to say on the old Alpha Beta supermarket commercials, if you like the show, tell a friend. If you didn't like the program and you wanted to let me know, you can do that at tjbradio@gmail.com. One other thing you can do for us, besides visiting the aforementioned website, is below, especially if you're looking at this in vertical polarity, you can look below where I am pointing right now, I think, more or less. Whoops, right around there. Something will say subscribe. If you'd be so kind, you can just hit subscribe. It won't cost you a nickel. It will cost you a moment in your email box, because when we do our next video, which will be a week from today, that is, if today is the 26th, that would be on the 33rd, and since there are 30 days in April, that would be May 3rd. When we do our next one and the one after that and so forth, you will be notified in your email box, and then you can just click on it and go right to it. Other than that, if you're telling a friend to take a look at our show, you can tell that friend to just look at either just straight Google. Just go to Google and type in Jeff Bushman Experience. You don't need the word the, just Jeff Bushman Experience, and it will come up pretty quickly in Google, and they can then click and go from there. This is video number 4 in this series, and I thank you. Next week, we hope to have a better camera. We may have added a theme song. We already have it chosen, and who knows what other good things will happen. So join us if you will. Thanks very much, and although you are going away now, please, 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 don't go away mad. Thanks. Good night.